Beginning. Earl Maddox had lived alone on his Texas ranch for nearly 20 years. His days were measured by the slow rhythm of cattle grazing, the creak of his porch swing, and the occasional dust devil chasing itself across the open plains. Retirement had come not as a choice but as a necessity. His body was too worn for oil rigs and construction work, and he didn't have family left to fuss over him. At 73, Earl was a man of habit. He woke before dawn, brewed his bitter black coffee, and shuffled outside to check the fence lines. By evening, he'd sit on the porch, guitar resting across his knees, picking tunes no one else would hear. Some neighbors said Earl liked solitude. Others whispered he was hiding from it. One July night, as a thunderstorm rolled heavy across the horizon, Earl noticed something strange. A streak of green fire cut across the sky, brighter and slower than any meteor he'd ever seen. It didn't vanish. It landed, somewhere near the north pasture. The impact was muffled, more like a deep thud than an explosion. Earl, thinking maybe a weather balloon or one of those experimental drones he read about, grabbed his flashlight and shotgun. He didn't believe in UFOs. He believed in trespassers and coyotes. But what he found at the edge of his property shook every certainty he thought he had. Metal. The wreck wasn't metal in the way Earl expected. It looked organic, like bone fused with glass, glowing faintly as though alive. And beside it stood figures. 11 of them. At first, Earl thought they were women wrapped in silver cloaks. Their shapes were human enough, slender forms, faces partly hidden by hoods. But when lightning split the sky, he saw their eyes. Enormous, glistening orbs, colors shifting like oil in water. Their skin shimmered faintly, pale lavender under the rain. They didn't attack. They didn't speak English either. Instead, one stepped forward and pressed her hand, a hand with too many joints, against her chest. The gesture was simple, a plea. Earl, soaked and bewildered, lowered his shotgun. "Well," he muttered, "this ain't in the rancher's handbook." He led them back to his house. They moved quietly, gracefully, as though unused to gravity. 11 strange women in alien robes crowded his old living room, dripping rainwater onto the floorboards. Earl made a pot of coffee, because it was all he knew to do. They couldn't drink it, but the gesture seemed to matter. Through halting gestures, drawings in the dirt, and strange hums that resonated in his skull, Earl pieced together their story. They were widows, every one of them. Their ship had been carrying survivors from some war across the stars. Pirates or enemies or something worse had destroyed their convoy. They had escaped in a lifeboat, crash-landing here on Earth. They had no way home. The realization hit Earl slowly. These weren't invaders. They were refugees. The days that followed tested the old man's sanity. His ranch, once quiet as a churchyard, now buzzed with activity. The aliens, he started calling them the widows, helped with chores in ways that astonished him. They could mend fences with strands of light that hardened like steel. They could coax crops from dry soil overnight. One sang to a sick calf, and by morning the animal stood strong again. But they grieved too. Earl would sometimes find them gathered under the stars, singing low harmonies that made his chest ache. Each song, he learned, was for a lost husband. 11 voices for 11 men who would never return. At first, Earl told himself this was temporary. He'd hide them, help them survive until, well, he didn't know. Government men would show up eventually. They always did. And when they did, Earl knew the widows would be treated like specimens, not guests. But weeks passed. No one came. The crash site sank into the prairie grass, swallowed by earth and weather. Earl began to believe maybe, just maybe, they were safe here. That illusion shattered one September night. A convoy of black SUVs rolled up the dusty road, engines too quiet, headlights cutting through the dusk. Earl cursed under his breath. Federal men. He recognized the look, the way they stepped out in unmarked suits, scanning the horizon like hawks. A tall man approached the porch. "Evening, Mr. Maddox. Mind if we ask a few questions?" Earl's hand twitched toward his shotgun leaning by the door. He played dumb. "Don't know what you mean." But the widows had already sensed danger. They gathered inside, trembling, their luminous eyes wide. Earl realized he had a choice: give them up and return to his quiet life, or stand in the way of powers far bigger than him. For reasons he couldn't fully explain, maybe loneliness, maybe decency, maybe stubborn Texas pride, Earl chose the latter. "You boys got the wrong place," he told the agents, his voice steady. "Ain't nothing out here but cattle and dust." The agents didn't believe him. They searched. They found nothing. The widows had cloaked themselves somehow, bending light around their bodies. But Earl knew this couldn't last. That night, after the SUVs disappeared into the dark, Earl gathered the widows around the fire pit. "You can't stay hidden forever," he said. "Sooner or later, someone will come back and they won't leave empty-handed." The leader of the widows, he called her Mariel, though her name was unpronounceable, placed her hand over his. Her eyes glowed soft blue. Through broken whispers, she made him understand. They didn't want to leave. Earth, harsh as it was, offered peace. And Earl, gruff, lonely Earl, had given them kindness no other world had. Ending. Over the next months, Earl transformed his ranch into something entirely new. Outbuildings became shelters. The barn turned into a workshop filled with alien tools and strange, humming devices. The widows blended their technology with his old cowboy know-how, creating a self-sufficient refuge hidden in plain sight. Neighbors started rumors. Some said Earl had hired foreign workers. Others joked he was running a cult. No one guessed the truth, and Earl let them gossip. The widows, in turn, gave Earl something he hadn't felt in decades: purpose. He wasn't just an old man waiting for time to run out. He was protector, teacher, friend. In their songs, they began to weave his name alongside those of their fallen husbands, not as a replacement, but as kin. The government did come back, of course. Drones buzzed overhead, satellites passed suspiciously often, and men in black circled like vultures. But Earl and the widows learned to outsmart them, using cloaking fields, false signals, even simple country tricks like decoys and hidden tunnels. One winter night, as snow fell across the prairie, Earl sat by the fire with Mariel. She placed a hand on his shoulder and whispered in halting English, "Home here." Earl, tears stinging his weathered eyes, nodded. "Yeah," he said softly. "Home." When spring returned, the ranch bloomed in ways no human eye had seen before. Crops glowed faintly in the moonlight, cattle grew strong and disease-free, and the land itself seemed to breathe vitality. Earl's neighbors chalked it up to luck, maybe divine blessing. Earl knew better. He was no longer just an old rancher. He was guardian of a secret community, a bridge between worlds. His quiet life was gone, but in its place was something grander than he ever dreamed. And every night, under the endless Texas sky, 11 alien widows sang songs of loss, of hope, and of the strange, stubborn human who had given them shelter.